So welcome to the middle of our Christian Mysteries studies together. And we have a very special guest tonight, or this evening for you, Cynthia Hoven. And Cynthia has written this book. She comes to us after many years at, I guess 25 years at Rudolf Steiner College, where she not only taught eurythmy, but she was the director of the foundation program. She also spent, her youth in general sciences, especially psychology, at Purdue University and St. Mary's University in St. Paul, Minnesota. And then she started her life journey, so to speak, with a trip to Europe and getting in touch with various people who helped shape her life. And one of those took her in the direction of eurythmy. I have had a number of conversations with Cynthia. I have followed her with great interest because I think it's more like about 5 years ago now you started Eurythmy online. And I thought this was an incredibly courageous act because many people, I'm sure, disapproved. And being this co-founder of Mystech, I found this to be an exceptionally important event that happened. And I find what I've just heard from people at the Anthroposophical Society's annual general meeting and conference, that especially people who live in small town America, they greatly appreciated the fact that this year's conference was online. And many have said to me through Mystech and through these AGM conferences that they could not have anthroposophical community if it were not for things like what Cynthia's doing and what Mystech's doing, and by bringing these conferences online, they feel so much more a part of a community of anthroposophists and spiritual scientists. So I don't want to take too much more time introducing Cynthia, but I just want to extend my great appreciation that you're here tonight, and that people like Joseph and Ken and Christina have brought about the fact that we are here together tonight. So Cynthia, I know that you would like to speak about the Logos, resurrection, and eurythmy, so please do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Good evening. I don't think I know many of you. I know a couple of you from some other webinars. And thank you for the invitation, for the introduction. For clarity, I wasn't the director of the foundation year, but of the weekend foundation program for about 7 years, and directed a eurythmy program. And I think Andrew doesn't know that I actually have a double major. I studied math and physics as well as psych, because I wanted to play both sides of the game, both the scientific and the human resources part. And then I took off on this life journey. Thanks for mentioning that. And I actually met Anthroposophy in Asia, in Dharamsala first, and after that in Tokyo. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm so grateful for every turn of the trip. Thank you also for asking about eurythmy. I'd love to go deeper into that, and it's very special that we're going to talk about eurythmy in relationship to the Christian mysteries. That's a question that's not asked very often, but it's an integral part of what we're doing. That anthroposophy is, or that eurythmy is really making the word, the creative word, the logos visible. And that's going to be the thread that I pull through, that I draw through this talk this evening, coming at it from various sides. At some points, we'll stand up and do a bit of movement, not a lot, but I'd like to open up with you this whole picture of how in Eurythmy, we have a pathway whereby the Eurythmy practitioner, could be you, whoever's really working on Eurythmy, comes to a deeper sensation, self-recognition, self-knowledge of spiritual self working in the body with the soul as the intermediary force. And this spirit self, this core self, is, as we all know, deeply, profoundly, in every way related to Christ, the word, the word logos. And through that, as a eurythmist, we'll come more to this by the end of the talk, but as a eurythmist, we feel the sheaths of the different bodies that we're living inside of. And as Rudolf Steiner says, we learn, if we do our job well, we learn to feel the objective nature of living inside the body, so that as an inhabitant of the body, we learn how to creatively work with the soul, with the astral body. So we direct its sensations selflessly. We learn to creatively work with the etheric body so that we move according to the etheric laws. And a eurythmist, I must say, isn't worth his or her salt if we're not firmly grounded. So it has to be a penetration through all of the layers. And it takes at least 7 years to do that, but my passion is to give as much of that experience as possible to everyone, because Eurythmy has true future-bearing forces in it. So I'd like to begin by sharing with you the words of the Eurythmy meditation. And if I can do a screen share here, I'm going to pull this up and read this with you. No, not that one, this one. There we go. The Eurythmy meditation, given for us eurythmists to experience what we're striving for. And it says, I seek within me creative forces working, creative powers living. The heavy weight of earth tells me, missed an S there, forgive me, tells me through the word of my feet. The forming power of the air tells me through the singing of my hands. The strength of heaven's light tells me through the thinking of my head how the great world in the human being speaks, sings, thinks. So let's consider this story. Yes, we're all doing this in our lives, but in this doorway that's opened up through Eurythmy, this path of mindful movement, we're really trying to understand how we are made by these creative forces. These are nothing other than logos forces. How are they speaking in me? How are they singing in me? How are they thinking in me? How am I a bearer of the world logos? So in a moment, we'll stand up and do this together in a very, very simple way. But let's look at this. The first 3 lines, this internal introspective glance. I seek within me. I seek to know what's working, what's living. And then we have this journey from the feet. How does the earth talk in me, through me? And then how does the air affect my hands and my head? What does it mean that my head is thinking? Actually, the German word here is sensing. It's, for those of you who know German, the word is sinnen. I could equally translate it through the sensing of my head, but the German word here is somewhere between sensing and thinking. How the great world in the human being, the great world, speaks, sings, and thinks. So we can do this without any movement, but we can also do this with a tiny bit of movement. And I'd like to do that with you now, if you're willing to do that, to stand up. And then I want to do, just to start us off in a good mood, I want to do 2 really basic eurythmy exercises, and then go ahead and sit and talk to you a bit more about the prologue in heaven, the prologue from the John Gospel and so on. So if you can, I invite you to stand up. I know at least one person who said to me he prefers doing eurythmy on the screen because when he's in a class, he said he feels too self-conscious. So I say that as a bit of encouragement to you, because you're in your room now, and although we don't have the lusciousness of moving ethers together, you can really have an introspective experience with this. So as I speak this verse, I'll be moving my hands, not doing formal eurythmy, but indicating with my hands where my mind is going, to my feet, to the air, to my head. You're welcome to move your hands if you like, or you can just do it as a sitting or standing movement inside yourself. And you don't need to speak with me. I'll give you the words. I seek within me creative forces working, creative powers living. The heavy weight of earth tells me through the word of my feet. The forming power of the air tells me through the singing of my hands. And the strength of heaven's light tells me through the thinking of my head how the great world in the human being speaks, sings, thinks. Thank you. Now, if you will, I'd like to do another maybe 4 minutes of eurythmy with you together. And I'd like to begin with something that I call the peace exercise, which is an exercise to really strengthen your sense of how you, as an ego being, occupy space above, below, right, left, front, and back. This is something that we carry unconsciously through our lives. We inhabit space more or less unconsciously. But before we were born, perhaps we can think that we were a globe, a sphere. And then after we were born, we step into this world of gravity and 3-dimensional space. And we have to get used to that to be a citizen of this world, this created world, the revelation, the wrought work. So standing straight, let's find first of all the vertical axis. Imagine the stars above your head, one star shining in through you from far away, shining into you, and to be worthy of that star, you stand straight. That's our archetype of our humanness, this uprightness that we want to touch the stars. Don't look up, feel it through your crown. You don't need to move your hand, by the way. I'm just moving it to talk to you. You can just do this in your body feeling.
Parties at the White House.
And then let that light go all the way through you, all the way through the length of you without losing your connection to the stars, and all the way down to your feet and into the molten core of the earth. And you can feel yourself like a lightning rod. If you've got that, it's a marvelous feeling. You are so present in light. And now, without losing that, spread your arms wide and feel what's added to that as you feel connected east and west. Feel connected to humanity, to nature, thousands of miles above the center of the earth, billions of miles below the stars. Here are we, a very small bit of space, and you occupy this cross. Feel that. The center of the cross is your heart. And now we add one more dimension, and that's front space and back space. Take a step forward and feel how we are built to move forwards. Our eyes, our nose, this is so unobserved, we don't notice it, but we're really made to be front space beings. When that goes to an extreme, we're stuck on our computers and our cars. We're addicted to the sense world, but it's beautiful. Love it. Now imagine that your angel taps you on your back and says, don't forget where all of this comes from. There's a whole hidden dimension to reality behind you. Go back and let your vision go soft. Try to imagine that you can see all the stars behind your head. Dark night. And that all of that star force, angel force, spirit force streams into you. Now coming back in the middle, feel once again the cross above, below, right, left, front, back, and how your heart is the center of this cross. Now bring that to a culmination by bringing your hands to your heart. And the last dimension of the cross is the outside and inside. Feel, I am real, I am here. What speaking inside me is so much bigger than the small things of life. This eternity lives in my heart. All right. With practice, you can open up into that cross right away, and you've got it. Up, down, right, left, front, back. Feel yourself as a presence in space. And now imagine your hands to be the hands of a healer. We're going to go into the 6 dimensions of this cross, but feeling like we want to bless space. I love to offer this, for instance, to people who live in a prison or school teachers who need to quiet the energy of their room. So we go like this. With hands, with active hands, feel. Don't you go down like I do if you can, otherwise just point down if your knees aren't strong enough. Go down and feel. May peace be below me as you think of gravity and the earth. Going up, thinking of stars with gratitude. May peace be above me. Going wide, spread out to the world, but without losing your center in your heart. May peace be all around me. With gratitude, may peace be before me, that I don't grab the world, may I love the world. And backwards, may peace be behind me. And now, may peace be within me. And breathe. You feel the rhythms of your heart pulsing, the breath swelling. And we come to that realm of expansion and contraction, the primal dimensions that connect life to this world. So with that, let's do a little bit of expansion, contraction. Your arms like wings open up, touching stars, and bring light into your heart. Where, in a deeply profound sense, infinity from outside finds the infinite center in you. Out of the tiny spark of light that is you, you have infinite seed forces. Open up and give them back. Give away, give away, give away. And the world answers you by filling you up again. Thank you. Receive with gratitude. You are filled. Open wide. And receive. Very quiet inwardly. Open wide. And again, within my heart shines the light of the sun. Within my soul weaves the warmth of the world. I will breathe the light of the sun. I will feel the warmth of the world. Light of the sun pour into me. Warmth of the world. Now you drop your arms, flow through me. And see if you can feel centered and really awake with life. Breathing deeply, grounded. Could you imagine walking through the world with that self-awareness? As you walk, you're carrying yourself connected to conscious, nothing staged, nothing unusual, just conscious. I'm a spiritual being and so are you. Walk through the world with that knowing. All right, thank you. Let's go on. Let's go on. So all of us as students of the spirit, we're all seekers of the word, the logos, for the word is the most intimate expression of the creator. And working with Eurythmy, I'm sure some of you have met his work in the course of your lives and your reading and your research. The nature of the word is that it wants to express itself and to be understood. The word speaks to us, not just through our ears. It speaks to us through all of our senses. It speaks to us through our eyes, through our sense of warmth and smell and touch. It speaks to us in everything that's around us. And you could say, and this is one of the spiritual paths of the ancient Greek temple mystery, to look at nature and feel that nature is a frozen or a mute word. Everything in the world, the natural world, is speaking to us, waiting for us to hear it and respond to it. And I think right away here we can go to the words of the Gospel of St. John. And these beautiful, beautiful words here, the prologue, which begs the question, what is the word? Let's look. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was a God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by the Word, and without the Word was not anything made that was made. In the Word was light, and light was the life of the human beings. I'm sorry for my error here. Yes, of the life of the human being. Perhaps like me, many of you were intrigued by these words already early on. I was deeply moved by this prologue. Even before I considered myself related to Christianity. And yet I had a small inner argument with it, as I told Andrew already once in our pre-conversations, because I thought, if I had written that, I would have said in the beginning was the thought, maybe, or love, but why the word? And I didn't think the word was creative. And I'm so glad I had that question, because it's sort of sent me on a pilgrimage to understand what in the world that meant. It was really I who was not awake yet, that I wasn't able to understand this word. And so Rudolf Steiner has given this another hint to this puzzle. And he spoke of the word in many, many of his writings. And one of his words that he gave, especially to the eurythmists, was this simple sentence. Let me see if I've got it on a screen share. It's very lovely. And hopefully without any typos here. And it says, the world word weaves through the world, and the world forming holds the word fast. Of course, he wrote that in German. It's very nice. Das Weltenwort webt durch die Welt, und die Weltschöpfung hält das Wort fest. The world word weaves through the world. And as I said before, we can consider that the entire world is a frozen word. So how do we understand the sentence of the prologue and the birth of this world word? So we can say, where the prologue speaks of the beginning, I like to use the almost sacrilegious term to say, before the beginning, before there was time, Creator God was completely unmanifest. And everything that would be or could ever become was held as an unmanifest power within the heart and mind of God. All beings, all ideas, all things. And then, for reasons that we can't surmise, because we are created beings, the Creator chose to, I like to say, to turn himself inside out. And everything that was still unmanifest within the heart of God began to pour forth and become manifest. And this manifest, this pouring forth, this inversion of the Creator God, that is the speaking, that is the word. God spoke the word, and the world became. So I invite you to chew on that for a moment, to think, what does it mean? We imitate that as human beings on our level as well, because we've been gifted the possibility of being word beings. The word became flesh through Christ. But even before that, if we look back to the Genesis, God gave to Adam the task to be the one who names things, who speaks the word. And from our utterances, we share our inmost being. I'll come back to that in a minute. Let me take a small sidestep and acknowledge that this concept of the word as creative has been present in many, many world mythologies. I think of the Mayans, and the Mayans said, after much deliberation, the heart of sky and the plumed serpent resolved to create the world. And they cried out, earth, in Mayan language, and the earth came into being. We also know in German mythology that it was the god Odin who had the gift of speech, and he bequested it to the human being. Already since ancient times, sounds were felt to have creative powers. That's a lot of what I've written about in my book as well. In the Sanskrit language, the first utterance of God was the glottal stop, the sound, followed by the ah. And so this sound, just a second, I just got something on my screen that I need to disappear. Sorry. There you go. Nasty. Hate it when that happens. Sorry. So the glottal stop, ha, followed by the ah. And with this ah, we have the open-throated utterance of the Creator, ah, pouring out, giving everything, and then culminating in the ooh sound. You see where it's going, the aum. And so the M sound, in Sanskrit mythology, the M is the breath of God that penetrates everything. And that's the origin of this aum, the living word of creation. And linguists have done a lot of research with this. A man named David Holm says that there's a tremendous study of this in all languages. I'm just going to read this off. In all wisdom traditions in Sanskrit, Hebrew, Tibetan, Chinese, Mayan, Greek, Coptic, Enoch, the runes, Latin, and to a lesser extent in English. So the word has long been felt to be creative, even if we haven't always understood it. But that takes another turn when we turn to esoteric Christianity, following in the Logos traditions, also of the Greeks, but I'm not going to go there. Riddlesteiner writes extensively about that in the books Christianity as Mystical Fact and the story about the Logos. I won't exactly take that thread here, but in esoteric Christianity, we learn that the word, meaning, logic, the matrix of the universe, are alternate translations of the Logos, that these are Christ. When we look at the threefold nature of Christ, Father, Son, Spirit, we have the Creator God, and then we have the creating God. And this creating God is the Word, is the Logos, is Christ. So right there we have pretty much the essence of the thing. In all the deeds of creating, we have the birthing, the speaking, we have Christ, the activity of Christ. And as we know, as students of Anthroposophy, of modern spirituality, we are not living yet in full awareness of the fact that our being, our speech, our activities is creating the future of the universe. But that's what we're destined to do. We are destined to create a future just as God the Creator spoke the future of the world. And we need to do that in honoring and experiencing Christ within us. Christ, the creative Word, became a human being, became man. And as we read in the prologue, the Word has dwelt among us. The Word has become flesh and gives us grace upon grace. And we must also take the next step and say the Word, Christ, has gone through death. Yes, even as our Word has gone through death, because our Word, our modern Word, is no longer alive in the same way. And Christ has attained and given us resurrection. And so what would a magic, or what would a living word be? We can even see the traces of that in things like magic spells. I won't linger too long there, but even in the time where you could say abracadabra and something else could move, it was because through the original word, we could give the true name of something to it. And we can get back to that in just a moment. Let's take the next step. Next step is pretty shocking, because when I started learning eurythmy, I thought this is really beautiful and wonderful to work with poetry and so on. Became a therapeutic eurythmist. But then we read these words that Riddlesteiner said, what do we really want to do when we do eurythmy? the entire human being becomes a larynx. And he said that definitively, and he said it over and over again. The entire human being becomes a larynx. Perhaps you find that as puzzling as I do. I didn't find that at all exciting. I didn't want to be a larynx. I wanted to move in harmony with these streaming sounds etherically. We become a larynx. What does that mean? It's been another one of the threads that I've carried. And it came alive for me in my ever deepening studies of occult science and those related texts, where Riddlesteiner speaks of how our human condition was from the beginning of the earth as we came from these non-physical dimensions down into the physical dimensions. Before we were body born in Hyperborea, before the material world was solid, he says, beautiful sentence, our bodies were as fine as the molecules of scent. Can you imagine? How fine is fragrance? And that was the body that we lived in as we as spiritual beings only barely touched substance. That was you. Barely touched in. And then as we solidified a little more, he said our bodies were like flowers. This was before the separation into the sexes. We could reproduce within ourselves. Our bodies were as fine as flowers. And then he speaks of the environment that once upon a time, Hyperborea, early Lemuria, this atmosphere that we were in, where we were surrounded by the activity of higher beings and we could still sense them. Speaking in that space, the archai, the archangels, the angels, and their speaking created forms, created movements in the ethers. And we, as flowers, almost like wind chimes that move with the vibrations of the air, we co-vibrated with the movements all around us. Just to anticipate where we're going, as a eurythmist, we do that. But let's stay here for a moment. So we had this vibration with the speaking of the created word. And then, as you know, as students of Anthroposophy, we have the condensation into matter of Lemuria, the fall, where we say we would like to sense the world in its opposition, in its solidity. We were tempted by Lucifer and we gladly said, let's do it. Let's eat the world from within. And then Rudolf Steiner is very quick, following right on that sentence. He says, Ahriman was right there. And Ahriman said, excuse me if I paraphrase this, but he said, Lucifer, great job. I'm here to help. And he took this whole finely quivering air or atmosphere and solidified it ever more and more and more into the material world, so that the physical world became filled with matter, with substance, and gradually also the human body with that. And then this point that's very important, we were no longer outside of our bodies. We became increasingly drawn into it and identified with it. And what did we sacrifice there? So before we sank into these bodies, Rudolf Steiner speaks about our etheric bodies. He said, at that time, the bodies were so fluid that you could just extend your arm far, far, a kilometer perhaps. The bodies were infinitely etheric, not infinitely, but extensively etheric. You could spread out your wings and go far. Ahriman, at the time of the fall, he says, takes this etheric body, especially the arms, the shoulder blades, and there, so this wing part of us, he takes it, and with this gesture I'm making here, he grabs hold of it, he condenses it, he compresses it, he inverts it, and he sticks it onto here, And he says, therewith, he gave us the larynx. So Rudolf Steiner says we have to become a larynx when we do eurythmy. What does that mean? So how does this work as a larynx? So this part here of the larynx relates to the spine, and here, this cartilage relates to the scapula, and then the vocal cords relate to the arms and the hands inside. The back of the head is the epiglottis, or the, oh, which one is that called? Forget the name, but the kind of the lid there that we have on top of the larynx. And actually, fascinatingly, in the curative eurythmy trainings, the very first thing that Rudolf Steiner taught to the young therapeutic eurythmists and to the physicians was to do a Goethean study of the metamorphosis of the arms into the larynx. So we modeled that with clay and with beeswax to actually sense the reality of that. And then to sense how in eurythmy, we have to learn once again to use the body now consciously in the same way that the body was in perfect harmony with the word before the fall. So maybe it's worth stopping for a moment, and it's a long thought, so to think that one through. We used to co-vibrate. Now, and especially by the year 2020, we're so identified with the body. The idea of having this etheric body that could resonate with the ethers, with the speaking of the world word that is all around us. The thought of doing that is something that people, they can't even imagine. And yet, that's the hallmark of the etheric human being. That is the realm that the Christ is living in now, where the risen word is. Profound. So try to just imagine yourself quivering with these creative sounds all around you. So Rudolf Steiner says, now we are reforming ourselves on a conscious level at a higher octave, like on the U curve. We're coming back up again and we're grabbing hold of the etheric body. So let's remember once again, the world word weaves through the world. Even now, the world forming holds the word fast. And our job as students of Michael is to look at the world and see through the sun's impressions, through the sun's phenomenon, how the world is speaking, right? Phenomenal picture. So continuing this, the first words that were spoken before that time of Babel, the Tower of Babel, would have been words which we, our forebears, used our larynx to create shapes with our words that imitated the shape and forming and the activity, the inner gesture of the objects in nature, like the bears or the bushes or the butterflies or fire, air, and water. Our mouths understood what our arms had understood previously, and we created utterances that named things correctly. That's called onomatopoeia. And sometimes we can still find words in languages that still carry that imprint. So maybe we can try that. Let's try a couple of words. I'd like you to say them. Let's say the sound K and see what that feels like. Do a little Goethean observation. That's a K. K. I invite you to say it. I have the speakers off, but you're just trying K. And you hear how it's an explosive opening rooted back there in the back of the throat. K. Our experience will be, how does that manifest in eurythmy? K. Yeah, let's try F. Where does that go? I have to inhale first. And then let's do 2 Fs. You have to push your lips forward. It's called a lip sound. We have to go back. And then, so in Hyperborea and Lemurias, we were surrounded by sound. What was? Was that a wind blowing through us? Was that an archangel? Why do we name some things like fire and flame with Fs? The F has its inherent meaning, and we need to know what it is. That meaning of the sound is part of God's language, the Creator's language. Let's try S. Where is that? It sits on your teeth, right? And you can take S and you can hold it and you can twist it, right? S. Try again. S. It's wonderful how you can hold on to it and take it. S is used, and I mean this statistically, I've studied the works of some linguists. It's used in almost every language to talk about things like sin, sneaky, sinister. Talks about other things too, but it's got a really high correlation with words that bear the sting of death in it. And that way it's related to the zodiacal sign Scorpio, the sign of death and healing and rebirth. S. Let's take the most fluid of all sounds. It's called the air sound, the R. Hope you can do that with me. So the R is the most movable. We have different kinds of R's in different languages, but this Spanish R is the best one. Hope you can do that. Let's try again. It's a tongue sound, right? So there are other partial R's, the German back there, or the like the one you can do on the tips of your mouth. I can't do it right away. Hardly do it. Or the American R, the r, but a full on goes all the way around. Let's try one more. The M. It's the sound out of all the sounds, it's the sound that hums, right? M. It's the sound of penetration. Remember the word aum, that this M permeates all things. Notice how you have to keep your lips together to say M. M. And you have to really stay with your attention at your periphery, or you'll lose it. This time, prove that to yourself by opening your mouth as you say it. It doesn't work. You have to. Okay, let's try doing these sounds. You can stay seated if you like to, or join me in standing up. We'll just go through these sounds to say, all right, in Lemuria, we used to move these gestures. So what would we name with the sound K? It must be the name of a great volcano, right? Krakow, for instance. So the K, because it's formed in the back of the throat, according to the laws of this harmonic metamorphosis, the K is created by the part of the arm that's closest to the collarbone and the spine, the scapula. So we do the K with that part of the arm, really deep energy, and we go, or really feel yourself moving from close to your core and breaking things open with the upper arm. Again, great, isn't it? Really wakes you up. Let's try F. F goes all the way out to your fingertips. So the movement We can wait. It goes all the way out to the ends of your mouth, to your lips and beyond. So the movement goes all the way out to your fingertips. We have to pull back. We have to inhale. Inhaling is done by pulling back with your arms. And then you're going to shoot like an arrow all the way through your fingertips. Again, pull in and so why did we name things fire and flame? Think of fires and flames as you do that. Yeah. And let's try S. Sounded. Someone's dog is happy with this one. Let's try S. Remember, you have to snake with this one. It's done on the teeth. Therefore, it's also done with your fingertips, meaning it's because it's in your teeth, it's far from the larynx. And so we do it with a part of our movement organism that's farthest from our core. That's the fingertips. Hold your fingers together. And as if you have snakes, you're going to snake upwards and snake downwards. And it's often hard to imitate, right? And again. Power sound, huh? All right. R. I hope you can say that's so much fun if you can. I'll turn sideways to do it. The R is a complete circle. It goes to the back of the throat, over the top, to the front, and so on. And when we speak it, also with our arms, and we go down, we go to the back of the throat, we rise and over the top. All right, let's try M. And we do that feeling our forearms. We have to inhale. That means we pull back. And with a steady, sustained motion. And that can go backwards as well. All right. So with all this as a journey, so Rudolf Steiner said, the human being, we are the lost word of creation. He has watched us fall into matter. He teaches us to observe how we've fallen into matter. And with the wisdom even of the Creator, he sees what's become of us. We are the lost word of creation. But following in Christ's deed and through our activity, we participate in resurrection. So through Christ, the Creator has made heaven and earth. He's made all of the ethers and then the elements, fire, air, water, and earth. And out of all these elements, nature was created. And out of these elements, our bodies were created, magnificent in their innocence. You imagine our original atom-like bodies, magnificent. But the body is now fallen, and through eurythmy, we learn to take hold of this fallen body. This is only possible because of Christ, who has brought the gift of resurrecting right into the phantom body. And with that, eurythmy bears the future of what the human being will become as we enter more into the experience of resurrection. And I am completely sure, I know that it's possible to meet Christ in the activity of eurythmy because it lets us open into a sphere of pure etheric love. As we use the body in these ways, objectifying it. So let me take another step and speak of just a little bit more here of what it is to live in the body as a eurythmist. It's really kind of initiation training, if you have the good luck to go deeply into it. So to begin with, the eurythmist has to be well-grounded, as I said. A not well-grounded eurythmist is not only endangering their own constitution, but they're not particularly pleasant to watch or even to be with. We have to be fully functioning human beings. And right into the body, we have to be agile and exact. And a good eurythmist, it can move with incredible alacrity, precision. That's the foundation. And then Rudolf Steiner gives us a wonderful picture that through the training in eurythmy, we take the first step towards transformation because we have to penetrate the physical body so much that it moves according to the laws of the etheric. It moves according to the laws of the etheric. What is that? So physical movements are just in space. They're disjointed. They're not in a continuum. But etheric movements move through time in a continuity, even if they're fast, but there's a continuity. So that's part of our training in eurythmy, to learn to feel where the etheric lawfulness is making things continuous. So in eurythmy, we practice streaming. Also, as you probably know, we say that the physical body is related to gravity and the etheric body is related to levity. And so in eurythmy, when we learn to be able to move the arms without weight. Mind you, we have to remember that's only possible if we understand also gravity. So we have to have a center from which we expand into the heights. Again, we learn to move the etheric body according to the laws. We learn to move the physical according to the laws of the etheric. This goes on, this process of transformation, if we can do it. Because how do we work on the astral etheric interface? We have to work on objectifying the etheric body, the astral body. The astral body beginning with the body of sensations. And I remember experiencing this before I read it. There came a time in eurythmy when I was at the place where I could feel everything in my body was a sense organ. I could sense on all the surfaces of my body where they were going. I was no longer disjointed into 12 senses, but I could feel them like so many doorways through which the world spoke into me. Not just the world, but through the training, as you probably know, music, Chopin, Mozart, whatever music, whatever tones, birdsong, whatever comes in, they come into the sense organ. And if we've cleared the sense organs, mind you, I'm not at that point all the time, but when I'm in my eurythmy state, I'm in this sense that we can sense that the entire sense organs are seeing purely, chastely, innocently. And then the etheric body is able to co-vibrate with that pure astral body. I hope you can understand. So the physical body, well grounded, works at the level of the etheric at the level of the astral. And so how does the astral work? By purifying the astral of its cravings and desires and so on, mind you, it's not always possible. My eurythmy self can do this. My normal self is totally normal. But we learn to objectify the workings of thinking, feeling, and willing. So I know this is what I do to be willing. This is what I do to be a thinking, cognitive being. This is what I do to be a feeling being. I can access all of the different doors of the soul. And in that way, the astral body obeys the ego, its intentions. I choose how to use my astral body as a eurythmist. What does the ego do? The ego looks higher to find its impulses. The ego, says Rudolf Steiner, learns to listen to the speaking of the angels and the archangels and to the origin of the logos of the word. And from that source, we work down through the bodies. I don't do this to say to you, oh, how marvelous it is to be a eurythmist. I do this to say, this is the process of a modern initiation stream and of the transformation. And if you see a eurythmist who is having a good day and is able to really align themselves, you should say, I see what a human being is meant to be in harmony with their embodiment. And in those moments, he says you also see the heart. It's as if the human heart, Rudolf Steiner gives this picture, as if the heart is completely open to the universe. You see that the soul is in combination with spirit and body in harmony. I think I have a quote for you here to take this another step. Let me see. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Oh, here. There. In Eurythmy, the human tears his inmost self away from the earthly. That means away from the causative forces of pure physical causation, and experiences his soul in such a way that in every single Eurythmy gesture she expresses, I bear a heavenly being within my earthly being. Thus, the human being frees his eternal self from the physical self through eurythmy. That which lives as a divine spiritual being in him is revealed through the transient earthly human. I'll read that one again. That which lives as a divine spiritual being in him is revealed through the transient earthly being. And when a person does eurythmy, the soul of that person appears to us as a being which pours from out of eternity into the temporary form of the body. So, like the great mysteries of creation, we only deserve to do this if we're doing it in service of Christ. If we do this looking upwards and asking to be filled. In our world, we find death. In eurythmy, we find forces of resurrection and of life. So, with a few closing words, even when we understand the magnificent grandeur and vision of eurythmy, we recognize that we're only at its beginning. We know that eurythmy will not come into its own as a fully developed art form and as a fully developed capacity of human beings until future Venus. We're just at the beginning. We eurythmists are really aware of that too. We should be. We should have a lot of modesty in what we're doing. We can sense how much is not yet possible as we struggle to bring forth the art. As for my striving, I strive to reach a point where with my movement, my gestures will speak into space with the same kind of unmistakable clarity and power that my movements speak as loudly, without noise, as unmistakably eloquent as my spoken word is. So, as our future evolves, there may come a time when we no longer have a larynx, when we no longer have vocal cords that cause the air to vibrate. When that time comes, we will need to have created the ability to create through our gestures, our will, our limbs, to impart meaning into the world through taking hold of our limbs and our resurrected etheric bodies. And in doing so, we will be working with the forces of the etheric Christ, who is already now present in the etheric body of the earth. So I truly, deeply hope that with all of these words, big pictures, I tried to create with enthusiastic modesty, that you have a bit of a appreciation for what's happening here. And what I wish for everyone is that you'll find a way to work on this in your own lives, even if in a small way, that you can open the door. You know, speaking now a little bit personally, even among anthroposophists, there are so many who go to the gym, no problem, or do yoga or whatever, and somehow everything that Eurythmy wants to offer us as a new path of mindful movement, connecting us with our deepest source, somehow it hasn't yet been embraced in the way that Rudolf Steiner dearly wanted it to. And I hope I've given you a few more words to inspire you to take it up, even if you only do the hallelujah or the peace exercise, contraction, expansion, but learn to work these edges in yourself.